At 2:17 a.m., a bleeding mother calls the most ruthless mafia kingpin in the city, whispering 3 desperate words: "I need to leave." Her abusive boyfriend is passed out drunk in the next room, completely unaware that a fleet of black mob sedans is already surrounding his building. She grabs her injured son and runs into the freezing night, straight into the arms of the underworld. She thinks she is just trading one dangerous cage for another. But this boss is about to start a war to keep her safe. Look at this setup, guys. Heavy rain pounding the concrete of downtown Hartford. We have Kyle, a ruthless mob boss who never handles entry-level interviews, sitting right across from Celine. She looks like a terrified kid wearing cheap clothes as a fragile suit of armor. His enforcer tosses resumes aside like garbage. Then, let us hit pause right here. Celine shifts in her chair, and her oversized sleeve slips down. Kyle instantly spots the dark purple fingerprints bruised deep into her wrist. A violent ghost wakes up inside his chest, and he hires her on the spot. Stick with me today, because saving this broken girl is going to completely fracture his criminal empire. It is a bitter truth, but sometimes dragging someone out of the dark means ripping your own world to shreds. Dante is visibly irritated, sliding her thin folder across the polished mahogany and whining that she is 20 minutes late. Kyle does not even flinch. Think about the sheer irony here. The man runs a massive illegal syndicate with weapons to reroute and politicians begging for mercy. So why is the underworld king sitting through a pointless job interview? He just needed a legitimate corporate cover for the afternoon. That giant glass building is nothing but a shiny mask over a network of pure fear. Then the heavy door swings open. Celine walks in, shoulders locked tight, looking like she is actively bracing for a punch to the face. She is barely 23. It breaks your heart, honestly. Deep and suffocating fear permanently alters the way a person walks through the world. You and I can feel the crushing weight Celine carries the exact second she steps into that room. She is completely drowning in a white shirt meant for someone twice her size. Her cheap black pants are held together by desperate, hand-sewn stitches. But Kyle is not looking at her worn-out clothes. His dark eyes are locked onto her hands, trembling violently against her lap. We all know that is not standard interview anxiety. That is the raw, vibrating energy of pure terror. Dante stays ice cold, bluntly pointing out she dropped out of college after 2 semesters. When he asks why, her pause stretches a fraction of a second too long. She blames money, but the words are completely hollow. Kyle hears the unspoken truth immediately. Desperation is a language he speaks fluently. Kyle did not become a mafia boss by accident. He spots a lie faster than a loaded gun in a dark alley. He senses instantly that Celine is running from a literal nightmare. Dante keeps turning the screws, tearing apart her weak history of diner shifts. Celine clenches her jaw so hard the bone jumps. For a second, Kyle waits for her to completely shatter, but look at this. She lifts her chin, her eyes flashing with a desperate fire, and stares Dante down. She tells him she deserves the position because she shows up, keeps quiet, and works hard. Dante scoffs at her. Celine does not blink. She demands he let her prove it. Hardened killers usually crack under his cold stare. But this broken girl holds it. It is wild to see. The truest courage is often born from the deepest despair. Kyle slices through the heavy silence with a voice like cold steel, asking why she really wants the job. Celine flinches hard. Her knuckles turn chalk white, and the professional mask completely shatters. She whispers that she simply needs it. Guys, it is the raw, broken sound of a cornered animal choosing survival. Dante shakes his head, ready to deliver a flat rejection. Celine stands up way too fast, shaking as she grabs her things, but right there, her oversized sleeve slips. Kyle goes perfectly rigid. Stamped into her wrist is a violent bracelet of purple and yellow. It is the unmistakable shape of a cruel grip. She yanks the fabric down, moving like someone hiding shattered ribs. Kyle stands up and tells her she starts Monday sometimes. Our silent scars scream the loudest. Celine stares at him like he has absolutely lost his mind. The tiny spark of hope in her eyes is instantly swallowed by dark suspicion. She asks him why, her voice trembling. Kyle says nothing. He cannot tell a total stranger that he recognizes the exact shape of her terror. Why? Because 20 years ago, he watched his own mother endure those exact same bruises in the freezing gutters of their youth. He just tells her to be on time. She nods stiffly and hurries out. The second the door clicks shut, Dante completely loses his mind. He warns that bringing damaged goods into their operation is a fatal liability. Kyle shoots him a glare so frozen it sucks the air right out of the room, ordering him never to use those words again. But the terrifying irony here. Dante is entirely right. That unspoken chaos is exactly what anchors Kyle's dark obsession to protect her. Hours later, the city lights fade, and Celine retreats to her miserable apartment in the decaying heart of the slums. It is a nightmare of flickering bulbs and heavy deadbolts. She hauls cheap groceries inside. The room is swallowed in shadows, lit only by the pale blue glow of a television. Her little boy, Noah, sits perfectly still on a ruined couch lost in cartoons. She asks if he is hungry, but the boy remains hollow and painfully silent. Then, heavy boots thump against the bedroom floor. Celine's spine turns to absolute ice. Her husband, Damon, emerges. He is massive, fueled by cheap rage and bitter cruelty. His hands are permanently balled into fists, just waiting for a fresh excuse to strike. Damon glares through the gloom, demanding to know where she has been. Celine fights to keep her voice steady, reminding him about the interview. He does not care. He stomps across the cracked linoleum, reeking of stale beer and bitter failure. Pinning her against the counter, he spits venom. Furious, she left him alone with their son. As he complains, his massive hand snaps to her face. He grabs her chin, fingers digging in hard enough to paint fresh bruises into her skin. Most people would scream or fight back. Celine just swallows the pain, whispering a quiet apology. She knows fighting a monster only feeds its rage. We always think the most terrifying monsters hide in dark alleys, but the real ones live right in your own house, demanding your absolute surrender. It is sickening how fast a tyrant can pivot. The exact second she submits, Damon's brutal grip softens. He strokes the jaw he just bruised, playing the wounded victim, whispering that he just worries when she is away. It is a pure masterclass in emotional poison. Jump forward to Monday. The morning air is sharp and freezing. Celine stands trembling beneath the towering glass of Varley Holdings. She kissed Noah goodbye at dawn while Damon was snoring off his rage. She wears the same faded clothes, burying fresh marks under a worn sweater. The lobby is a literal fortress, crawling with icy men in tailored suits who look more like hitmen than security guards. Celine steps forward, clutching her paperwork like a fragile shield, walking blindly into an incredibly dangerous new life. Let us look at the gravity of this moment. Celine steps through those doors on day one, and the temperature instantly drops. A stone-faced guard inspects her ID, handing over a keycard like he is passing off a loaded weapon. Up on the 14th floor, she is handed over to Margaret, a vicious manager with a stare made of flint. Margaret drags Celine on a relentless march across 3 floors. Barking out strict security protocols, they finally stop at a cramped, windowless office. Margaret shoves a heavy binder into Celine's chest, warning her that the untouchable Mr. Varley never handles entry-level hires, so she better not fail him. You and I both know the harsh truth about survival. Sometimes getting exactly what you prayed for is the most terrifying thing in the world. Celine stands alone in that tiny room, nursing a fragile spark of hope, but here's the tragic twist of fate. For 3 agonizing weeks, Kyle never shows his face. The boss is buried in blood-soaked underworld deals high above her, yet he is always watching in the dead of night, bathed in the glow of his monitors. He studies her security footage. He watches her arrive before the sun, eat in total isolation, and vanish exactly at 5. Then the grim details surface, a dark shadow beneath fresh makeup, thick sweaters when the office is hot, a painful limp she tries to mask. Kyle feels his blood freeze in his veins. It is his mother's tragic history repeating itself. Unhealed trauma leaves an eternal fingerprint on the soul, as long as you know exactly where to look. Let the scene play out in your mind. The underworld king, Kyle glides into Margaret's office for a casual check-in. He asks about the new hire. Margaret's instincts flare up. She reports Celine as a complete ghost. She is efficient but fiercely guarded, vanishing the second the clock strikes 5. When Margaret offers to spy on her, Kyle's eyes turn to pure ice. He shuts the idea down and walks away. But behind the paperwork, Celine is secretly drowning. For 6 agonizing weeks, she has painted on a brave smile, surviving shifts with bruised ribs and split lips. We have all seen this tragic reality before. The people smiling the brightest in the room are often fighting the darkest demons. You never truly know what kind of private hell someone returns to when they leave the light. Let us hit pause and really look at this nightmare together. Picture Celine walking into her kitchen, completely unaware the room is a ticking time bomb. Her 4-year-old boy, Noah, accidentally knocks over a cup of juice, a tiny mistake. But Damien has been drinking. He unleashes a brutal backhand that sends the sweet boy flying, his head cracking violently against the refrigerator handle. Blood spills onto the floor. Celine goes absolutely feral. She scoops up her child and locks them in the cramped bathroom, while Damien hammers on the door, screaming about raising a weak son. Here is a brutal truth life teaches us. Real weakness is a grown man taking his rage out on a defenseless child, while true strength is a terrified mother shielding her baby from the very monster they live with. Damien finally stumbles away, leaving Celine trembling on the freezing bathroom tile, in the dark. The fragile illusion of her family completely shatters. For 4 long years, she swallowed his poisoned definitions of love. But seeing real blood on your baby changes you forever. She realizes if she stays, Noah will grow up believing real men use fists to command respect. Later during her shift, Celine is a walking ghost, her hands shaking over her files. At exactly 4:47 p.m., the heavy office door clicks open. Her boss, Cale, stands in the doorway like a shadow, unaware he is about to rewrite her destiny. Sometimes you cannot find the courage to save yourself, but a fierce love for your child will force you to do the impossible. Celine jumps from her desk, her heart hammering against her ribs as she stumbles over hollow, nervous apologies. Cale just gently pushes the door closed and locks his steady eyes on hers. He does not ask what happened, he simply drops the heavy truth, telling her plainly that she is hurt. Celine tries to laugh it off, desperately wrapping herself in that fragile armor of survival. But Cale sees right through the cracks. When he quietly asks if it is her boyfriend, the emotional dam finally breaks. Celine collapses into silent tears. The cold boss melts away, leaving a man fighting his own rising fury. He looks at her trembling shoulders and promises he can help. Life often sends you an unexpected protector exactly when you finally decide you are done being a victim. That gentle offer of help hits Celine harder than a blow. Panic instantly floods her veins. She snaps at him, demanding he stay out of her business. Paralyzed by the terrifying thought of what Damien might do if another man intervened, she chokes out a desperate lie, then bolts past him. Cale does not chase her. For the first time in 20 years ruling the underground, this untouchable king feels entirely useless. Hours later, the city lights bleed into his quiet penthouse. Cale sits alone, his jaw clenched tight. Spread open beneath his hands is a thick manila folder. His men just handed him every ugly truth about the man sleeping in Celine's bed. It is a stark reminder that your darkest secrets will always, eventually, find the light. What sits inside that folder is pure poison. To the outside world, Damien plays the perfect gentleman, constantly flashing a charming smile. But behind closed doors, he is a soul-crushing nightmare. Cale reads every terrible word, while his closest man begs to put a bullet in Damien tonight. 3 words from Cale, and the abuser ceases to exist. But Cale remembers the sheer terror in Celine's eyes. If he rains down blood right now, she will run from him too. So he chooses strategy over raw vengeance. He mobilizes his fixers, quietly building an invisible fortress to catch her when she finally falls. 3 long weeks slowly tick by. Sometimes, the absolute smartest move a person can make is sitting in the dark, waiting patiently for the exact right moment to strike. For 21 days, Celine actually starts finding her voice again. She smiles in the break room, her shoulders relaxing just a fraction. You might think the storm has passed. Then comes 2:17 in the morning. Cale's private phone glows in the pitch black when he answers. He hears Celine's panicked whispers from a locked bathroom. Damien went into another rage. Noah is hurt, and there is blood. The second an innocent child pays the price. The rules burn to ash in one heartbeat. Cale sheds his restraint and becomes a ruthless predator. His voice drops to freezing temperatures, sharp and absolute. He tells her a car will be at her curb in exactly 8 minutes. Grab your papers. Leave everything else and run. When true evil strikes, bold action is your only escape. You and I must unpack this moment together, because the tension in that bathroom is heavy enough to crush bone. Celine is struggling to pull oxygen into her lungs, terrified Damien will stir. Then Cale's voice slices through the panic with one simple question. Do you trust me? The line clicks dead. Miles away, Cale is barking orders for a car, grabbing his pistol. He spent 20 years building a ruthless criminal empire, and he is tossing it all on the table for her, back in the dark. Celine is violently shaking, shoving Noah's birth certificate and 57 crumpled dollars into her coat. Here is a truth you can never afford to ignore. If you ever find yourself hoarding loose cash just to survive the person sleeping down the hall, it is time to walk out the door. Just on the other side of that flimsy wood, Damien is dead to the world in a drunken haze. Yet Celine knows better than to let her guard down. The man is a parasite, blessed with a sickening radar for her anxiety. She knows the script. He will wake up, shatter a glass, and spin himself into the victim. But then her eyes drop to Noah, a quiet boy holding a blood-soaked towel to his head. That single image incinerates her doubt. It is a primal reality of life. When a monster comes for your child, your everyday terror turns into a cold, lethal survival instinct. She finally twists off the shower knob. The sudden quiet feels like a physical weight. Slowly, she cracks the door, drifting like a phantom into a living room, bathed in the eerie blue glow of a muted television. Every muscle is pulled tight as a wire as she creeps past the mattress. One agonizing shift of weight. A sickening crack tears through the room as the floorboard betrays her. Damien groans, shifting his massive frame under the blankets. Her blood turns to ice. Noah buries his face into her shoulder, clinging to her like a lifeline. For 5 seconds, the earth halts. No one breathes. Finally, the tyrant exhales and rolls away. Celine takes no chances. She clears the room, snatches her coat, and throws the deadbolt. Slipping into the hallway, she leaves behind the illusion of a home. We must remember this lesson well. Never lower yourself to beg for love from a hand that only knows how to strike. The heavy door clicks shut, severing her past. Stepping into the bitter wind, she spots a black sedan idling by the curb. Marco steps out of the shadows. He is built like a cinderblock wall in an expensive suit, looking like a man who breaks bones for a living. He tells her to get inside. Celine freezes, terrified she is trading one nightmare for a syndicate getaway car. But Marco sees the blood matting Noah's hair and suggests a hospital. Celine refuses. Hospitals mean police, and police mean dangerous questions. Marco nods, offering an underground doctor instead. Out of options, she climbs into the leather seats. It is a harsh reality of life sometimes. Stepping into the dark with a stranger is far safer than sleeping beside the devil, you know. That apartment vanishes in the rearview mirror, but the relief never arrives. Celine sits paralyzed by the vast unknown. They park before a building masquerading as an abandoned laundromat. When Marco throws the heavy steel door open, the deception crumbles. They step into a pristine high-tech bunker. Warm air washes over their freezing skin. Standing in the kitchen is Dr. Lim. Unfazed by the midnight arrival of shattered lives, she gently asks Celine to bring the boy forward. Noah has not made a single sound. His wide eyes are frozen in the hollow stare of pure trauma. It shatters the heart to see a child forced to carry such heavy emotional debt. Children are the silent sponges of our chaos, and shielding their peace must always be the truest measure of an adult. Let's pause the movie right here, you and I, and look at the absolute irony of this scene. Dr. Lim plays the good angel, cleaning Celine's wounds and offering a warm meal. But watch Celine's eyes. She is completely frozen. That is the sickest joke of long-term abuse. It rewires your survival instincts. Celine thinks a free meal is just a trap with a different coat of paint. She is terrified her brutal ex, Damien, is about to kick the door in, but when that heavy deadbolt finally turns, it is not the monster she knows. It is Kale, the untouchable king of the criminal underworld, just walked in to play savior. Here is the bitter truth we all have to swallow. Sometimes the only people who know how to pull you out of hell are the ones who already live there. Watch how the director completely flips the power dynamic in this shot. Kale takes off his tailored jacket, rolling up his sleeves. And suddenly the ruthless mob boss looks like a guy holding the weight of the world. Celine is staring at him, utterly confused. Why would a guy who runs the shadows risk his entire empire for a broken mother? She manages to choke out the question, and Kale just sits there, leaving a safe distance between them. Because you needed help. That is his whole reason. He drops his voice to a rough whisper and promises to keep her safe. It hits you right in the chest, does it not? The universe has an incredibly twisted sense of humor. True safety is a painfully rare gift, and sometimes it is handed to you by the exact person you were taught to run away from. Now the cold facade completely cracks, and the backstory hits us like a freight train. Kyle leans in, the room thick with grief, and tells Celine about his own mother. 15 years trapped with a monster who broke her bones and called it romance. The official paper said heart failure, but Kyle knows she was quite literally scared to death. He was 17 when he swore he would never let another woman drown in that same dark water. Celine just breaks down, sobbing into her little boy's hair, whispering that she is lost, and Kyle's eyes just soften. You already did it, he tells her. You left. Let that sink deep into your bones. Real courage is never about feeling fearless. It is about choosing to walk out that front door while your hands are shaking uncontrollably. You and I know Kyle means well here, but look at Celine's reaction. His absolute confidence should be a comfort, but it actually sets off her alarm bells. After 4 years in a toxic hellscape, she learned a dark lesson. Guys who promise to protect you usually just want to own you. They just wear a nicer suit. Kyle lays out a precise plan: rest, top-tier lawyers, and full custody. He vows Damien will never touch her again. Celine wants to scream that her ex is a relentless predator, but she is simply too exhausted to fight. She nods as Kyle leaves a massive guard at her door, pulling her sleeping boy close. Pay attention to this moment. Making the right choice rarely feels like winning a prize. Most of the time, it just feels like agonizing survival. Now the camera cuts to the villain, and the irony here gets delicious. It is 6:43 in the morning. Damien wakes up expecting to rule his kingdom, only to find dead air. He wanders into Noah's room empty. Then he sees the open closet, the shoes, the hidden bag, all gone like a ghost story. The panic hits him so hard his hands shake. He dials her number, getting only the cold click of voicemail. The final reality check comes in the bathroom. The toothbrush and the stuffed rabbit are missing. His pathetic illusion of total control shatters in a second, and he punches the drywall, splitting his knuckles to pieces. Take a hard look at this fool. You never truly appreciate the life you have built, until you destroy it with your own two hands. Watch this guy completely unravel as his fragile ego snaps in half. Damien is sweating now. He calls Celine's mother, demanding to know where she went. But Linda is not playing his game. Her voice is like shattered glass. She reminds him he isolated Celine so badly they have not spoken in months, and then she hangs up. His twisted brain simply cannot accept that his victim outsmarted him. He digs through her email, which he always stalked, and finds a message from Varley Holdings, her new job. He remembers that tiny spark of hope she had after the interview, and his dark obsession flares up. He grabs his keys, ready to burn her new life down. Do not miss the lesson here. When you build a cruel cage around a person, all you are really doing is teaching them how to fiercely hunt for the lock. This scene makes my blood boil, but appreciate the tragic irony. At 9:15, Damien struts into Varley Holdings wearing the exact shirt Celine used to iron for him. Pure arrogance. He marches to the security desk, demanding to see his girlfriend like he owns the building. The guard does not flinch, making a quiet call and delivering a flat denial. Desperate, Damien plays the weeping father, using fake tears to manipulate the room. The guard makes one more call, and the vibe shifts. He kicks Damien out. Damien is shaking, screaming his lungs out in this fancy lobby, but those heavy doors stay firmly locked. Write this down. Ironclad boundaries are your only real shield. Once a monster shows you their true face, you lock the door and throw away the key. Let's dissect this next beat together, because the tension here is incredible. The lobby guard threatens to call the cops. Damien wants to tear the place down, but the coward inside him takes the wheel. He backs off, glaring at the glass tower while choking on his own useless anger. Meanwhile, 14 floors up, Margaret warns Kyle that Celine's violent baggage is currently pacing the sidewalk. Kyle is freezing cold. He orders double security and wants Damien's face at every entrance. Margaret asks him, "Are we running a corporation or a witness protection program?" Kyle does not blink. "Both," he says softly. His eyes are dead serious. Take a hard look at what real power actually looks like. True leadership has absolutely nothing to do with managing a profit margin. It is about stepping up to shield the vulnerable when no one else will. Margaret pushes back hard, and you cannot blame her. She reminds Kyle that predators like Damien do not quietly disappear into the night. It is a lethal game. Kyle just tightens his jaw and says, "Watch me," desperate to stop him. Margaret drops the ultimate emotional bomb. She brings up the ghost of Kyle's mother, claiming she would hate all this escalation. The room goes so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Kyle whispers back that his mother would understand exactly why this line has to be drawn. Margaret storms out. Kyle immediately pulls up the security feeds, watching Damien pace like a stray dog before speeding off. He memorizes the license plate and calls Dante to tail him. Here is the undeniable truth about protecting people. Sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the safe rules and walking straight into the fire yourself. Dante tries to be the voice of reason, reminding Kyle they are dealing with a deeply traumatized human being, not a corporate asset. Kyle grinds his teeth and tells him to do it. Dante sighs, knowing this shadow war never ends cleanly. Cut back to Celine, and the contrast is heartbreaking. She is suffocating in her own paranoia. A simple car driving by makes her chest seize up in little Noah. The doctor notes his physical bruises are healing, but his mind is locked in a cage. The kid is completely mute. He refuses to eat unless Celine feeds him and panics if she leaves the room. Celine is drowning in the feeling that she failed as a mother. But we need to remember something vital. Healing from severe trauma is never a straight highway. It is a messy, brutal climb. and you have to forgive yourself along the way. Are you ready to see how a survivor finally fights back? On day 4, Patricia walks in. She is a razor-sharp lawyer with the eyes of an apex predator, here to turn Celine's trauma into an ironclad legal weapon. She demands the unvarnished truth. Celine whispers that the nightmare began 4 long years ago. It was just loud screaming at first. Then a fist punched through the drywall. Then came the heavy hands and the undeniable bruises. Celine breaks down, admitting she lied to herself. Pretending it was all just an accident, Patricia does not even blink. Her pen keeps moving as she coldly asks for the exact details of the physical and sexual abuse. Celine's voice completely shatters. Listen to me on this one. You can never ignore the tiny red flags. What starts as a damaged wall always ends in a completely shattered life. Patricia drops the heavy question that haunts every survivor. Why didn't she report him sooner? Celine's voice shakes. Damien convinced her the world would think she was crazy. And the tragic part is, she actually believed her love could fix his broken pieces. But you and I know the bitter reality. You can never stitch up a toxic soul by bleeding yourself dry. Patricia sits there, documenting 2 agonizing hours of pure horror. Fractured ribs, blackened eyes, the freezing January night he locked her out in the snow, finally. The lawyer snaps her briefcase shut, echoing like a gunshot. She is filing the emergency orders at dawn. The law is their shield now. But Patricia drops a chilling reality check. A predator like Damien is not going to surrender. He will absolutely violate that order. Patricia warned her this exact scene would play out. She knew Damien would try to poison her family against her. Breaking out of a toxic cage is brutal, but refusing to walk back inside is the ultimate test. It takes exactly 7 hours for Damien to ignore the law. At 11:34 at night, Celine's phone lights up the pitch-black room. The ringing never stops, bleeding into endless voicemails. He runs through every psychological trick. First he sobs, playing the shattered victim. Then the switch flips, he turns vicious, accusing her of stealing his son. Finally the mask falls off, he screams, swearing to hunt her down. 17 missed calls in 90 minutes. It is a terrifying masterclass in emotional torture, leaving her trembling, utterly sick to her stomach. Let us hit pause and really step into Celine's shoes here. By the 18th ring, the psychological siege breaks her. She grabs the receiver, demanding Damien stop the harassment. He spins his usual web of pitiful apologies, but Celine strikes back, confronting him about the abuse their little boy endured. Damien plays the coward, trying to gaslight her by claiming Noah simply fell. But when she refuses to fold his facade cracks, he lets out this dark, scraping laugh and drops a terrifying name, Kyle. He sneers that a dangerous man does not offer protection without a sinister price, accusing her of trading herself for safety. It reveals a tragic truth about the minds of abusers. They cannot fathom pure motives, so they will always try to make your desperate escape look like a shameful sin. Celine drops the phone, the glass shattering against the floor just like her fragile illusion of safety. She pulls her crying boy to her chest, whispering empty promises that everything will be all right. But here is the fatal catch. Damien knowing Kyle's name means the monster is already hunting them from the shadows. The next morning, Kyle walks into the safe house to find a woman hollowed out by fear. When she recounts the call, Kyle's expression turns to stone. The enforcer understands the psychology of the hunt instantly. Damien is not just making empty threats, he is actively mapping the perimeter, looking to tear down her only shield. Predators always study the board before making a move. They systematically try to isolate you from your lifeline before delivering the final blow. We often lash out at the exact people trying to save us, crushed by sheer exhaustion. Celine asks Kyle if she is just some pathetic charity case. The heavy silence breaks when Kyle finally reveals his own haunting ghosts. He grew up watching his mother endure a 15-year nightmare, while the neighbors simply closed their blinds. When 7-year-old Kyle tried to intervene, his father broke his ribs, teaching him a twisted lesson about manhood. By the time Kyle was big enough to fight back, his mother's spirit had already withered away. The coroner called it heart failure. But Kyle knew the neighborhood's silent complicity was the true killer. It serves as a haunting reminder. When you look the other way, your cowardly silence becomes an active participant in the ongoing violence. Kyle stares at Celine, stripping away his tough exterior. He tells her she was never a project. She is the second chance he could never give his mother, asking only one thing in return: just stay alive. But in this world, peace is terribly fragile. That legal paper fails in less than a week. Damien soon appears on her mother's porch, visibly unhinged. He deploys his usual sick tactics, weeping hollow tears and playing the heartbroken father. Yet a mother's intuition is an unshakable force. She stares right through his pathetic performance, calmly stating she knows exactly what he did to her daughter. The monster flinches at the pure honesty. The reality is simple. No amount of calculated manipulation can ever penetrate the fierce shield of a parent's protective love. Let us look at this piece by piece, shall we? Damien stood on that porch playing the victim, but we know what lurks beneath. The second his performance fails, his voice turns to ice. He projects his own sickness onto Celine, calling her the real manipulator. He leaves her mother with a sickening promise. He says Celine will inevitably come crawling back to her cage when her mother calls in a panic. Celine swears she will never return, but the trauma bond plants a terrible seed of doubt in her mind. This is exactly how the vicious cycle operates. Toxic people do not target your flaws. They weaponize your empathy, counting on your beautiful heart to excuse their relentless cruelty. And with those dark battle lines drawn, the countdown to a brutal custody war officially begins. For 6 agonizing weeks, Celine remains hidden in the shadows of Kyle's world, but an abuser losing control becomes wildly desperate. Damien builds burner accounts, leaves flowers like quiet threats, and stalks the daycare. He floods her office lines until Kyle finally answers, delivering a chilling warning that makes Damien abandon the tactic. Yet physical distance does not cure the mind. In the quiet isolation, the poison blossoms. Celine begins gaslighting her own memories, entertaining the dangerous illusion that her tormentor has somehow changed. This is the insidious magic of trauma. It quietly repaints your history until absolute cruelty wears the mask of misunderstood passion. Never let the hollow ache of loneliness trick you into returning to a cage you barely survived escaping. Psychology defines this agonizing state as a trauma bond. Celine's brain is literally rewired to associate her captor with survival. You cannot simply erase 4 years of dark conditioning. She endures physical withdrawals, questioning if she is the villain. Professionals hand her the cold facts of the abuse, but logic rarely survives the lonely midnight hours. She finds herself typing apologies to Damien, her thumb hovering dangerously over the send button. The urge to surrender is profound. We must understand that healing is never a neat, upward climb, sometimes. Real bravery is simply deleting a text message before it destroys your peace. Just days before the trial, Kyle finds her sitting in the dark, entirely consumed by the toxic ghost of the man she is trying to escape. Sitting across from her in the dim light, Kyle keeps a careful distance and offers a listening ear. That is all it takes for the dam to break. Celine weeps, confessing she is drowning in rare memories of Damien's sweetness, the gentle apologies, the tender moments. Kyle does not judge her. Instead, he offers a profound truth. Predators feed you just enough warmth to keep you doubting the nightmare. He watched his father perform this exact routine, keeping his mother trapped because she wanted the illusion to be real. When Celine shows shame for her fragile state, Kyle grounds her. True resilience is not the absence of weakness. It is standing at the edge of the cliff and choosing not to jump. In that safe space, Celine finally admits her darkest fear. She almost called her abuser back. When Celine admits she wants to return, Kyle delivers a brutal reality check. He tells her plainly that going back would be a death sentence. The traumatized mind naturally fixates on theatrical apologies, completely ignoring the violence. But those sweet apologies are merely brief intermissions in a dark tragedy. Kyle's voice drops as he shares his deepest wound. He gave this exact warning to his mother just weeks before she died, but she refused to listen. He begs Celine to prioritize staying alive over feeling guilty. It is a harsh lesson you and I must carry forward. True survival often requires torching the bridge behind you so returning becomes impossible. Breaking down in tears, Celine surrenders her phone, asking the enforcer to erase the monster's number from her life once and for all. Unable to trust her heart, Celine lets Kyle sever the toxic lifeline entirely. Fast forward to the morning of the custody hearing. She stands trembling in a borrowed blazer, absorbing her lawyer's strict strategy. Stick to the cold facts and bury all emotion. The legal system deals only in hard evidence, leaving her terrified her resolve will shatter. Stick with me here, because this is the critical turning point. Walking through those heavy courthouse doors, her stomach plummets. Damien is waiting in the hall, dressed in a sharp suit, looking exactly like the charming illusion she fell for years ago. Always remember this fact. A flawlessly polished exterior is often just a mask designed to hide the darkest intentions. The monster is prepared to walk into that room and play the heartbroken victim. The moment our eyes locked, my heart raced. My damaged instincts screamed at me to run right back into his familiar arms. Damien flashed a gentle smile, acting as if 4 years of pure hell never happened. For a split second, I was deeply tempted by the fantasy then. Reality hit. The vivid memory of bright red blood on my little boy's face flashed behind my eyes, snapping the toxic illusion in half. My spine stiffened, and I walked past him without a word. Inside the courtroom, we faced a stone-faced judge. My lawyer went straight for the throat, presenting medical records, brutal photographs, and an unhinged voicemail of Damien screaming violent threats. His lawyer tried to spin a sick narrative, claiming I faked the abuse. The lesson here: when manipulators try to twist your story, the cold, undeniable truth will always be your greatest armor. Let's pause right here and really look at this scene. The judge sits up there, totally unreadable. And the courtroom is so quiet you could hear a pin drop. She takes the stand, physically shaking, and swears in. Her lawyer starts off soft, but slowly walks her right back into her darkest nightmares. We are talking broken ribs and Damien spinning absolute lies to the doctors while she was paralyzed by fear. But here is the fatal emotional spot. The dam breaks when she talks about the night Damien shoved their little boy, leaving him bleeding. That is the bitter truth about human survival. My friends, you might take a beating for years, but watching an innocent kid take the fall, that is the exact moment you find the terrifying strength to finally snap your chains. Now watch Damien's lawyer step up to the mic, pulling the sleaziest trick in the book. He tries to weaponize her anxiety, telling the room she was hallucinating the abuse and was never actually trapped, but she is entirely done shrinking away. She fires right back, laying out exactly how Damien stole her keys and tracked every breath she took. When that lawyer smugly asks why she did not just leave, she leans in, totally defiant. She asks him if he ever had to calculate whether running away would get him killed faster than staying put. She stayed only because she thought it kept her alive. The lesson here hits hard. You can never let sheer, blinding terror write the script of your life. Even when the exit door looks like a solid brick wall, the whole room goes dead silent. The judge drops the hammer, granting sole custody and leaving Damien with 2 pathetic hours of supervised visits. That gavel is a massive win. But you and I know this kind of guy never walks away. As she tries to leave, Damien blocks the aisle, triggering her old panic. He leans in, whispering a nasty promise that he is not done. Before that threat can land, Kyle steps in like a walking eclipse. His heavy hand clamps onto her ex. With a dangerously low voice, Kyle tells him the terror tour is cancelled. Damien tries to puff out his chest, but his fragile ego shatters against Kyle's cold stare. It is a beautiful life lesson, real. Undeniable power never actually has to raise its voice to make somebody sit down and shut up. Damien just tucks his tail and backs away. Kyle gets her out of there, leaving Damien to stew in his toxic obsession. Later, she is sitting in the dead quiet of this safe house. The legal papers say she is a free woman, but the air feels suffocating. Suddenly, her phone starts buzzing. She answers an unknown number, and that sickeningly familiar voice crawls out of the speaker. Damien laughs, mocking the idea that a few locks could ever keep him out. He cold-bloodedly promises that she will always be his property before hanging up. She just sits there, entirely frozen in the dark while her kid sleeps in the next room. It is a bitter pill, but here is the life lesson. Getting away from the physical fire is only step 1. The real psychological war is finding the mental toughness to survive the bitter ashes they leave behind. The paranoia is eating her alive. Every shadow makes her flinch, and every floorboard creak sends ice water through her veins. At 4:17 in the morning, she breaks down and calls Kyle. He picks up instantly, absorbs the threat, and spares her any empty sympathy. 20 minutes later, he walks through her door, checking corners with terrifying precision. Hearing Damien's words turns his face to granite. Within seconds, his tech eyes are hunting that burner signal. Kyle is officially done playing defense. The life lesson staring us in the face is pretty blunt. When a vicious predator starts sniffing around your sanctuary, locking a cheap wooden door is a joke. You have to bring in a much darker, far more dangerous wolf to stand guard. Let's break down how this psychological warfare works. She looks at Kyle, practically begging to know if he can really keep the monsters out. He gives a low hum, a quiet guarantee that he is the danger. He locks down the property, putting guards on every door. They endure 3 agonizing days of pure silence. Just waiting, finally, Dante kicks the door open and slams a laptop on the table. The screen shows a grainy gas station camera, but there it is. 3 seconds of Damien standing next to a rusted truck, and the hunt is officially on. This gives us a crucial life lesson about conflict. You never want to run blindly into the storm. When dealing with an arrogant nightmare of a person, you sit tight and let their own stupid ego make the fatal mistake for you. Damien is running on desperation now, making him incredibly sloppy. The crew finds out he used a stolen card to buy liquor before crashing at a garbage motel 4 miles from her safe house. Kyle stares a hole through the map while Dante pulls hacked GPS data from that truck. Suddenly, the screen lights up with red pins. It is chilling. Damien is running a systematic grid search across the city, hitting every shelter and old address he knows. He is inching closer every hour. The life lesson baked into this moment is something you cannot ignore. Pure desperation will turn an ordinary idiot into a highly unpredictable weapon, when a toxic person literally has nothing left to lose. You have to stay 3 chess moves ahead of their madness, or you are going to get caught. Kyle loses patience and orders a watch on the motel. Later he walks into the safe house, shifting the mood. She is on the floor, teaching her little boy to tie his shoes. The kid pulls off a messy knot and lets out a pure, innocent laugh. You can physically see it punch Kyle in the gut. This hardened enforcer is grieving a normal childhood he never had. But the bitter irony hits instantly. The second the kid notices the giant man in the doorway, he panics and hides behind his mom. It breaks your heart, but it delivers a massive life lesson. Real strength is not just having the brutal capacity to crush the monsters at your gate. True power is having that violent capability, yet actively choosing to be gentle around the fragile people you are protecting. Watch closely here, because Kyle understands trauma. He slowly lowers his massive frame, trying not to look scary. But she checks his eyes and knows it is bad. They step into the hall, and he hits her with the cold truth about the motel, and Damien's grid search tightening the noose. All the color drains out of her face. Kyle quietly offers to pack them up, move them across state lines and bury their identities forever, but she fiercely shakes her head. She absolutely refuses to be chased out of her own life. It is a terrifying choice, but here is the life lesson. Running away might buy you a couple of seconds to catch your breath, but that is never true survival. Eventually, you have to plant your feet in the dirt and look the violent storm dead in the eyes. This is the exact moment everything shifts. She is crying, exhausted from checking the rearview mirror, admitting she cannot keep her son safe. The hallway drops to freezing. Kyle steps up, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm whisper. He pitches a permanent solution. 1 word from her, and Damien ceases to exist. She gasps and calls it murder. Kyle does not even blink. He coldly corrects her and calls it protection. She cries that she could never ask him to do that. His gaze pierces right through her. You are not asking, he clarifies. I am offering. Here is the harshest life lesson of all. When the rules of a broken system fail to protect the innocent, you have to decide exactly how much of your own soul you are willing to trade, just for a quiet night of sleep. Imagine the silence in that room. She asks Kyle why a powerful man would risk burning his empire down for her. He goes perfectly still. He confesses that if he had this power at 17, his abusive father would be dead, and his mother would be alive. The raw grief in his voice is brutal. She breaks down, begging for a resolution that avoids a shallow grave. Kyle nods, instantly turning the house into an armed fortress with guards everywhere. But the tragedy is that little Noah feels all this heavy tension. The kid stops eating and clings to her hand. The life lesson here is heartbreaking. You can never truly hide your internal panic from the fragile people you love. They will always feel the dark thunder of your storm, no matter how brightly you force yourself to smile. Let's pause the movie right here, guys. Look at Celine, burying her face in her hands. You can practically feel her chest caving in. Every shadow in that room looks like Damien. Every single creak of the floorboards feels like a hammer against her ribs. It was Thursday night. At 9:34, when her phone completely shattered the quiet, her mother was on the line, shaking so hard she could barely speak. Damien had found the house. Celine's blood just turns to absolute ice. He stood on her mom's porch for 20 whole minutes, screaming into the pitch black, swearing he knew they were hiding in Hartford and the cops. They told her mom they would not even send a car until he broke a window or a bone. You and I really need to swallow a bitter pill right now. The law is almost never built to catch you before you hit the ground. Sometimes you are the only one who can forge your own armor against the monsters. Come on, let us unpack this absolute mess together. Celine knew that restraining order was basically just a piece of paper. It protected her, sure, but it left her mother completely exposed to the wolves. She swallowed her panic and begged her mom to pack a bag and run. Sitting there in the dark, listening to her little boy Noah breathing, her supposedly safe sanctuary felt like a shoebox. Then Friday rolls around, and Damien pulls a masterstroke of pure evil. Kyle gets dragged out of a high-stakes syndicate meeting, just to hear the nightmare unfold. Damien, the actual abuser, waltzed right into a police station and filed kidnapping charges. He played the heartbroken dad perfectly, crying that Celine stole his kid, and the cops ate out of his hand. Here is a brutal reality you cannot ignore. Toxic people will gladly take the exact systems built to protect you, and weaponize them to keep you locked in a cage. Celine did everything right. She played entirely by the book, but rules do not mean a damn thing to a sociopath. Damien unleashed his expensive legal team, painting Celine as this bitter, hysterical ex holding his kid hostage. Dante tried to calm the waters, promising the fake charges would crumble, but that did not stop the misery train. The cops demanded an official interview and a full sweep of her safe house. Kyle absolutely lost his mind, refusing to let them breach the fortress he built for her. But fighting the cops only made her look guilty. How do you explain invisible psychological scars to a detective who thinks abuse is just a loud argument? Kyle had to swallow his pride and hire a shark of an attorney. Then Damien dropped the hammer, subpoenaing her work records. Pay attention to this one. A well-dressed lie will always run a full marathon before the naked truth even manages to tie its shoes. Pull up a chair, guys, because we really need to talk about the lies we tell ourselves in the mirror. Dante walked in and delivered the fatal blow. The police seriously suspected Kyle was financially trapping Celine. They thought he was running her life the exact same way Damien did, just using dirty money instead of his fists. Kyle froze dead in his tracks. The accusation hit him like a freight train because, deep down in some quiet corner of his soul, he knew they were right. He used his massive Mafia wealth to build her this beautiful safety net. But those heavily guarded walls came with a hidden leash. The terrifying syndicate boss stood there, paralyzed. He found her later, folding clothes in the mansion he bought for her. The irony here is just suffocating. You can paint a cage with solid gold and line the floor with silk, but the person locked inside is still just a prisoner serving time. The laundry basket hit the hardwood with a loud crack as Kyle explained the kidnapping charges. Celine just broke. She went to every single court-ordered visit. Damien was the one who never bothered to show up, and now this monster was playing the victim. Kyle warned her that skipping the police interview meant an arrest warrant. Celine was gasping, the old nightmare wrapping around her throat again. But the second he mentioned the rumors about his financial control, her panic evaporated, her eyes turned to pure ice. She stared right through his chest, asking if he really was controlling her. That question sliced his pride to ribbons. He stammered, trying to deny it, but she fired back, listing how he dictated her schedule and posted guards at her door. Remember this fundamental rule about love. True support means handing someone their power back, never hoarding it for yourself. Celine completely unleashed her anger, screaming that Kyle offered to make Damien disappear without ever asking what she actually wanted. Kyle threw his hands up, swearing he only meant to keep her safe, but she was literally shaking with fury. Think about it. She spent 4 agonizing years trapped with a monster who micromanaged her survival now. She was letting another powerful man do the exact same thing, just hiding it behind a mask of generosity. Kyle tensed up, pointing out that he never once raised a hand to her. Celine delivered a reality check that leaves a mark. By making himself the only thing keeping her alive, he made sure she could never function on her own. She had just traded a bloody cage for a comfortable one. The silence in that room became so heavy you could choke on it. Kyle felt his chest cave in. Good intentions will never erase the lasting damage caused by total control. A sickening wave of realization washed over Kyle. He had slowly morphed into his own ruthless father, confusing absolute dominance with affection. His voice was barely a whisper when he finally asked what she needed to do, wiping her face. Celine begged for the space to figure out who she actually was without a man pulling her strings. Kyle gave a slow, painful nod and turned toward the door. Just as his hand touched the brass knob, she quietly thanked him. The big, bad Mafia boss could not even find the words to speak. Outside, he ordered his men to back off, but told them to never lose sight of her completely. Driving out into the pitch-black night, he grieved a woman he realized he never really possessed. By Saturday morning, Celine sat shivering in a cold police interrogation room. Here is the hardest lesson of all. If you truly love someone, you have to swallow your own fear and let them breathe. Stick with me, guys. because the energy in this room is about to completely flip. Celine sat perfectly straight, watching her lawyer place a digital recorder on the metal table. The detective went right on the attack, repeating the lie that she kept Damien from seeing his little boy. Celine fired back with ice water in her veins. She drove to that custody center 3 separate times, and her abuser never bothered to show up. Her lawyer coolly slid the time-stamped visitor logs right across the desk. It was bulletproof evidence. She was there, he was not. The detective instantly backpedaled, demanding to know where Noah was hidden. Patricia shut that garbage down, citing the legal right to protect a child from a violent maniac. Life teaches us a simple rule for moments exactly like this. When the world tries to back you into a dark corner, bring your receipts and refuse to flinch. The tension in that tiny room became absolutely suffocating. Celine's lawyer stared a hole through the detective, stating that revealing Noah's location was a literal death sentence. They tried to negotiate a supervised visit. But then the police dropped a massive bomb. Damien was telling everyone Celine was sleeping with her boss, Kyle Varelli, claiming the mobster used his dirty money to keep her trapped. Celine gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles went dead white, fiercely denying the whole thing. Kyle gave her a safe place when she had nothing, and he never demanded a single favor in return. Her attorney instantly terminated the interview, loudly scolding the cop for suggesting a woman could not get help without selling herself. Let me tell you a secret about the real world. Genuine protection never comes with a hidden invoice. Celine practically ran to the hallway, gasping for air. Patricia paced the linoleum hallway, literally vibrating with anger. Damien's lawyers were setting a brilliant, disgusting trap. They did not even need real evidence. Their only goal was to paint Celine as a ruthless manipulator who used rich men, entirely destroying her credibility in front of a judge. A sick, metallic feeling rose in Celine's throat. She realized the only way to survive this legal slaughter was to sever every single tie she had with Kyle. No more financial support, just cold, absolute independence. Sometimes you literally have to set fire to your own safety net just to prove to yourself that your legs still work. That evening, Celine made the hardest phone call of her entire life. She told Kyle she was leaving the safe house. The crushing silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. The fearsome syndicate boss quietly caved, sending his men to help her pack her bags. You and I both know this is merely the quiet before the storm. Celine dragged her heavy bags into a freezing, run-down studio apartment. The window latches were rusted shut, but for the first time the space was entirely hers. There were no Mafia soldiers watching the perimeter, just a tired mother protecting her boy. As police sirens bled through the paper-thin walls, doubt started eating at her sanity then. Her phone buzzed in the pitch-black room. No caller ID, she answered, and the blood literally drained from her face. Damien's chilling whisper slithered right through the speaker. He let out a dark, mocking laugh, taunting her brave attempt to leave her powerful bodyguard. The monster had been sitting in a car outside her building for 3 days. He watched her carry every box. The lesson here is terrifying. Real monsters never just let you quietly walk away into the sunset. Celine completely forgot how to breathe. The air in her lungs turned to solid ice as Damien gloated that there was no one left to hear her scream. The line went dead. She sat frozen on the mattress until heavy footsteps echoed down the cheap hallway, stopping right outside her door. 3 slow knocks. It was the exact kind of sound that paralyzes you straight down to the bone. Pure adrenaline flooded her veins. Celine snatched Noah out of his bed, clamping a trembling hand over his mouth, and scrambled into the tiny bathroom. Damien started singing her name, violently rattling the brass doorknob. Then came the sickening crack of the main lock giving way. He was inside, her hands shaking wildly. She secured the flimsy bathroom lock and dialed for help, begging the cops to hurry. Listen to me. When absolute darkness finally finds you, raw survival instinct is the only weapon you have left. Picture this with me. Celine is huddled in the dark, feeling the walls of her fragile new life being ripped apart. We have all felt that helpless panic when rescue feels miles away. Glass shatters in the next room. Every heavy thud of Damien's boots sounds like a countdown. She clutches little Noah, absorbing his terrified tremors. The brass doorknob shakes. Wood splinters under his weight, and just as the horror peaks, distant sirens finally wail. Damien freezes, hisses a sick promise that she is never getting away, and ghosts into the night. Celine collapses. Here is a simple life lesson. The violence of an attack is pure terror, but the deepest, lasting trauma always takes root in that suffocating silence left behind when the monster finally walks away. Let us hit pause right here. This is that brutal crossroads where pride has to be buried so survival can begin. Celine finally realizes you cannot fight a monster with empty hands. She calls Kyle, gasping out 3 desperate words. He tears across the city in 11 minutes flat, busting through her door and totally ignoring the useless cops. His cold eyes scan her for injuries, softening only when she shakes her head. Then that lethal stare shifts. One officer mumbles a pathetic excuse about protocol, and the room drops 10 degrees. Kyle radiates a quiet fury that practically forces everyone to bow. The life lesson here is harsh but true. When the system completely fails to protect the vulnerable, the only real shield you have is the one you build yourself. The air in that wrecked apartment turns heavy, the second Kyle drops his voice to an icy whisper. A foolish officer tries to brush the nightmare off as a simple domestic dispute. Kyle steps right into his space. A rookie stammers, suggesting Celine visit the station later, but Kyle shuts it down. He dictates terms with the ruthless precision of a mob boss. He demands they take her statement right now, with a cruiser parked outside until Damien is caught. The older cop tries hiding behind policy, but Kyle just stares a hole through him until the man completely backs down. Here is a life lesson for us all. True strength is never about screaming the loudest in the room. It is about standing like an absolute, immovable wall to protect the vulnerable people who cannot fight back. Celine sits paralyzed, her veins burning with the toxic hangover of adrenaline. Kyle quietly tells her to pack a bag. Panic hits her. She is terrified that running away will ruin her legal case. But Kyle drops a heavy truth. She is not going to a safe house. She is moving into his private penthouse. She fights him on it, crying out that she is simply not safe anywhere anymore. Kyle just looks at her and says she should at least be unsafe in a place where he can actually protect her. Think about this life lesson. Sometimes letting someone else be your shield is the only way to survive a war you never asked for. She finally caves. They head up to his high-rise fortress, a place wrapped in that untouchable silence that only massive wealth and raw power can truly buy. Marco hauls their cheap bags inside while Kyle disables a military-grade security system, turning to Celine. This ruthless boss suddenly softens his stance, pointing out the guest room. She feels ridiculous standing in all this luxury. She whispers that she has no idea how to ever repay him. Kyle just pulls off his tie, looking totally drained. He tells her to save the thanks. Knowing the real feud is just starting, she begs for one night of peace, and he swears she is safe now. But to her, safety is just a cruel joke. She tucks Noah into a mattress that costs more than her car, swallowing back her exhausted tears. Here is a quiet life lesson about trauma. The deepest scars never bleed. They just keep you staring blankly at the ceiling long into the lonely night. Down in the grim streets below, Damien is still prowling. Celine wakes up, and for one split second, everything feels normal. Then the crushing weight of her stalker hits her like a train. She wanders into the kitchen to find Kyle looking like a millionaire hitman, wearing a suit that costs more than her annual rent. A hot breakfast is waiting. She tries to thank him, but he bluntly admits his enforcer cooked it. They share a deeply tired look that proves neither of them slept at all. The air is thick as they sip their black coffee. Finally, Kyle sets his mug down, announcing it is time to end this nightmare permanently. You and I can see the real life lesson here. No matter how much cash you hoard in the bank, true peace of mind is the only luxury that actually matters. You and I need to unpack what a permanent solution looks like in Kyle's world. He lays out the cold facts. Damien violated the order, and Dante tracked the coward to a trashy motel. Celine immediately wants to call the cops, but Kyle crushes that idea fast. The system is drowning in red tape. By the time they move, Damien will be a ghost. Instead, Kyle pitches a much darker plan. He wants his guys to snatch her ex, hold him hostage, and deliver him with undeniable proof. Celine freaks out, calling it a literal kidnapping. Kyle smoothly rebrands it as a citizen arrest, making it obvious he is not asking for permission. Here is a vital life lesson. The official rules will not always save you. Sometimes real safety means stepping completely outside the lines to survive. This is the second Celine truly sees the real Kyle Varley. He is not a knight in shining armor. He is a dangerous crime boss who makes big problems disappear. Now he is offering to weaponize that darkness just for her. She nervously asks what happens if this goes sideways. Kyle does not even blink. He promises to eat the fallout, dropping a reality check. He is not trying to be the hero. He just wants to give her the power to stop hiding. That hits her deep, since panic has been her normal state for 4 agonizing years. Let this be a life lesson. Merely surviving a toxic nightmare is not the same as actually living. You have to find the guts to finally strike back. She snaps out of it and tells him to do it. Kyle just nods, ordering her to stay locked down with Marco. When Celine asks what happens next, Kyle is made of ice. He grabs his jacket and flatly states he is going to end this. The Starlight Inn is the kind of miserable dump where bad choices die. Kyle parks 2 blocks away, glaring at the rotting motel through tinted glass while Dante hacks the feeds. Room 23 has not shown a twitch of movement for 40 minutes. Kyle maps out the assault in total silence. 2 floors, smashed cameras, and 4 armed hitters waiting. The cops are still 30 minutes out, but Kyle is done waiting, if Damien resists at all. Kyle is fully ready to bury him. Here is a stark life lesson. When a dangerously quiet man finally loses his patience, the only smart move is to run for your life. His men cover the exits and the steel trap is officially set. Kyle and Dante creep up to that motel door, surrounded by a toxic silence. Kyle hammers his fist against the wood, but nobody answers. Dante slides a master key into the lock, shoving the door open to an absolute nightmare. The real horror is plastered all over the walls, dozens of secretly taken photos of Celine and little Noah. This psycho built a literal shrine to his sickness, yet the room is completely empty. The back window is swinging wide open, scuffed with fresh boot marks. Right then, Kyle gets a call. It is Marco, sounding totally panicked, and Kyle feels his blood freeze solid. Celine has vanished from the penthouse. Here is a massive life lesson. Never assume you have the winning hand until the game is actually over, because fate can flip the board in a single heartbeat. You can imagine the panic tearing through Kyle right now. Marco swears he looked away for 5 minutes and she was gone. Kyle orders every man onto the streets with a lethal promise if Damien touched her. Bodies are dropping. But here is the twisted irony. Celine walked out on her own. Pacing that silent penthouse, she realized hiding behind scary men was still hiding. She got a text demanding she meet Damien at the park, or spend forever looking over her shoulder. Every instinct screamed to stay safe. But she marched right into the flames anyway. Listen to this life lesson sometimes. You have to look the terrifying monster right in the eye to prove you are not prey anymore. She was absolutely terrified. But she was finally done playing the helpless victim. Let's pause right here, you and I, because this opening scene sets up a tragedy you can feel in your bones. Celine snatches her little boy the absolute second Marco glances away. Taking an elevator ride that feels like a slow plunge into hell, she throws herself into a cab, eyes wide with raw panic, and bolts to Bushnell Park. And there he is, Damien the big, terrifying monster from her nightmares is slumped under a dying oak tree, looking completely pathetic, thin, unshaven, reeking of misery. Yet he still has the nerve to smirk, arrogantly claiming he knew she would crawl back. It is almost funny if it was not so devastating. It brings us to a harsh but simple life lesson. Holding on to a toxic past is exactly like drinking deadly poison and waiting for the other person to slowly die. It is agonizing to watch people freeze when their trauma stares them down. But Celine refuses to play her old part. She stands her ground, asking this broken man what he wants, right on cue. Damien rolls out the greatest hits of an abuser, swearing he is ready to change. It is the exact same tired script she used to swallow every time she hid locked in a bathroom, but the spell is broken. She looks him dead in the eye and drops one single heavy word. No, you can actually see his mask slip. His pleading face instantly twists into pure, unhinged rage as the reality of losing control hits him. And honestly, here is a simple life lesson we all need to hear. Setting firm boundaries will always anger the exact people who used to benefit from you, having absolutely none. This scene hits different. Celine completely strips away his pathetic disguise, reminding him of the horrific night he shoved their little boy, Noah, into a table. Of course, Damien blames the alcohol, but she is done buying tickets to his pity party, pulling her son close. She tells him they deserve a life entirely free from his terror. For a split second, you think he might walk away instead. His hand strikes like a snake, grabbing her wrist so hard it bruises. He hisses that she is his property, but as her son cries out, something inside Celine finally snaps. She does not weep. She catches fire. It leaves us with a vital life lesson. You simply cannot keep a fire trapped in the dark forever, without it eventually burning the whole house down completely. Celine is officially done shrinking her soul to fit inside the tiny corners of Damien's fragile ego. The heavy air of suppressed terror simply evaporates from her body. In its place rises a pure, blinding instinct to survive. She does not blink. She does not flinch. Without a single ounce of hesitation, Celine drives her knee upward, striking her tormentor with a sickening, definitive crunch. It is a violent reflex pulled from the absolute deepest well of a mother's panic. Damien crumbles to the dirt, gasping for air as his crushing grip on her arm shatters entirely. The life lesson in this brutal moment is undeniably clear. Sometimes, to break the chains of abuse, you must realize the monsters you fear in the dark are just flesh and bone, and they break exactly like the rest of us. Now we pivot to Kale, a man who operates in the cold shadows of the underworld. He completely loses his temper when Celine admits what she did. His voice turns to pure ice as he asks why she would try reasoning with a maniac. He points out the tragic irony. She just handed a violent psychopath a map to her front door. Tears stream down Celine's pale face as she looks at the mobster. Explaining she had to prove the fear no longer owned her, Kale falls entirely silent. His deadly gaze softens for a mere second as he asks if it actually worked. She admits the terror is still there. But the running has finally stopped. The simplest life lesson is often the hardest to practice. The bravest thing you can ever do is look your deepest fear right in the eye and absolutely refuse to take another step backward. The atmosphere inside the luxury penthouse grows suffocatingly heavy. Kale looks Celine dead in the eye and delivers a brutal reality check. He warns her that Damien is a dangerous predator who views restraining orders as useless scraps of paper. He lays out two unforgiving choices. They can wait for Damien to put Celine or her little boy in the ground, or Kale can make the abuser permanently disappear. No body, no evidence. Just a ghost in the wind. Celine flashes back to 4 agonizing years of trauma, remembering how easily the legal system abandons the vulnerable. When she asks about the consequences for him, he does not even blink. Here is a difficult but true life lesson sometimes. You have to draw your own firm line in the sand when nobody else will step up to protect the people you fiercely love. This is where the moral compass shatters completely. Kale speaks with chilling calm, detailing how Damien will fade into a forgotten cold case. Celine battles her heavy conscience, but the haunting memory of her son crying in the dark anchors her resolve. She realizes morality is a luxury a desperate mother can no longer afford, and tells Kale to make the call. Yet the second his finger hits the screen, she stops him dead. Celine demands to set the trap herself. If she is orchestrating this nightmare, she needs to own every piece of it. Kale tosses her a burner phone, and her hands tremble as she dials the monster. The life lesson here is undeniably potent. Facing your inner demons head-on is truly the only way to take your stolen power back. The line connects instantly, and Celine feels her stomach plummet. Drawing a shaky breath, she demands a meeting at an abandoned warehouse. No police. No lawyers. Damien pauses, his paranoia creeping through the receiver as he wonders if it is a trap. Celine feeds him a desperate lie, claiming she wants to fix their broken family. The crazy part is he buys it completely, revealing the twisted arrogance of abusers who believe their victims will always crawl back. Once she hangs up, Kale tells Celine his enforcers are ready, but she must stay safely behind. She desperately wants to watch her tormentor fall. But here is an important life lesson about finding closure. Sometimes, stepping away and letting karma take the wheel is the most empowering move a survivor can possibly make. Let us look at this pivotal moment together. You and I, Celine sits in a shadowed penthouse, holding her sleeping child, waiting for the Mafia hit she just ordered on her ex. She knows Kale is right. Once you step into the underworld, that dark stain never washes out. But the universe has a wicked sense of humor. 10 agonizing minutes pass before her phone shatters the silence. It is Kale, and his voice is colder than winter wind. Damien did not walk into the warehouse alone. He brought a loaded weapon and a human shield. Celine's blood turns to absolute ice when the mobster drops the horrifying truth. The hostage shivering in the dark is her own mother. A vital life lesson emerges right here. The dark chaos we invite to solve our problems often drags innocent people directly into the devastating crossfire. Through the phone speaker, absolute chaos spills into the quiet penthouse. Celine hears Kale barking furious orders, car doors slamming, and the soul-crushing sound of her mother screaming in terror. The trap she carefully constructed has backfired in the worst possible way now. The gentle woman who raised her is caught in the crosshairs of a desperate maniac, and the agonizing guilt rests entirely on Celine's shoulders. In a blur of blind panic, she speeds recklessly through the dark city streets. The abandoned warehouse looms ahead like a rusted nightmare bathed in harsh moonlight, totally surrounded by Kale's enforcers. The life lesson here is harsh but necessary. We can never truly control the ripple effects of vengeance. and retaliation almost always exacts an unexpected toll from those we love the most. Marco plays the loyal soldier, begging Celine to stay inside the car, but Celine is done taking orders. She reminds him she does not work for his boss, rips her arm away and bolts toward the danger, dodging 2 guards. She kicks open the heavy metal doors. The stagnant air hits her like a physical blow, smelling of old engine oil and raw panic. Harsh lights throw jagged shadows across the concrete room. Cale stands nearby, with his hands raised, desperately trying to talk Damien down. But the terrifying scene in the center completely stops her heart. Damien is pressing a weapon directly against her mother's head. Linda is completely frozen, unable to speak or move. It provides a tragic life lesson about human fear. Sometimes, when faced with sudden, overwhelming evil, innocent people simply shut down entirely. Pause the movie right here and look at this absolute mess. Damien is losing his grip, screaming that since they took his family, he will take hers. Cale tries to play the calm mobster, but you cannot reason with a guy who has surrendered to madness. The shouting dies into a suffocating silence as Celine steps into the harsh warehouse lights. Damien looks like he just saw a ghost. His face twists with shock, blinding rage, and toxic obsession. He demands everyone leave the room. Cale steps in front of Celine like a human shield, refusing to budge. Damien tightens his shaking grip on the cold steel and swears he will pull the trigger. Here is the bitter truth we all have to learn. Toxic obsession never actually desires a peaceful resolution. It only ever wants absolute control. Watch how pathetic this gets. The madman presses the cold steel against Linda's trembling head, desperately blaming Celine for his own ruined life. In the shadows, Cale's men circle like wolves, begging for a clean shot, but Damien keeps the weeping mother positioned as a human shield. Celine knows she has to make a desperate psychological play. She says she will stay, but only if her mother walks. He calls her a liar. But this is where the irony really stings. Toxic people always harbor a stubborn delusion that they are still truly loved, no matter how much agony they cause. Celine attacks his fragile ego, demanding that, if he ever genuinely cared, he will let the innocent woman go. She promises not to run, and right there in the dim light, a sick spark of hope flashes in his wild eyes. It is exactly that desperate hope abusers cling to, believing the people they broke will always come crawling back, trembling. Damien lets the terrified mother go. Linda stumbles toward the exit, casting one agonizing glance at her daughter before disappearing now. It is just Celine and the man who made her life a nightmare. Damien lowers the weapon, his voice cracking like a wounded dog as he begs her to say she still loves him, and in that silence it happens. Celine finally sees him with total clarity. The suffocating fear just washes away. He is not some powerful monster, he is just a sad, empty man fluent only in the violence he causes. She looks him dead in the eyes, teaching us the ultimate life lesson. True freedom begins the moment you look your oppressor in the face and feel absolutely nothing at all. Let us step into this moment together, because this is where the story breaks your heart, with just a few soft words. Celine completely dismantles him. She admits she truly loved the ghost of the man who once promised her the world. But that illusion is dead. She forces him to choke on the brutal reality of his actions, recounting the dark isolation and the violence he inflicted in front of their child. Damien is sobbing on his knees, throwing out desperate, pathetic apologies, but weeping does not mend shattered bones, and it never erases the trauma forced upon a little boy. He swears he will change. She simply shakes her head, her eyes completely dry. The heavy lesson we find here is absolute. Some betrayals shatter trust so deeply that no amount of tears can ever put the pieces back together. She tells him true change means standing in the wreckage and admitting you lit the match. His cruelty was never born of love, and he refuses to face the reality that he broke the only person who actually cared for his soul. Damien collapses entirely, trembling. He lifts a heavy weapon to his own chest, sobbing that his life without her means nothing. Cale calls him a coward for trying to escape his punishment, but Celine moves closer, demanding he look her dead in the eyes in his hollow stare. She sees the pathetic truth. It was never power that drove this man, but a suffocating fear. The deep lesson to carry with us is this. The monsters that haunt our nights are often just terrified people, using a mask of fake anger to hide their own crippling insecurities. Damien is paralyzed by the thought of fading into nothingness. His violent dominance was just a cheap veil over his fragile ego, staring down at him. Celine maps out his grim future. She is walking away. He is going to be locked inside a concrete cell, stripped of his son and left entirely alone. She refuses to let him take the easy exit with a bullet. You and I know, true accountability means waking up every day in the cold ashes of the fire you started. She demands he survive and carry the burden of his choices. So he might finally learn that real love does not leave bruises. He drops to the floor, weeping like a lost child, as heavy handcuffs lock around his wrists. The lesson is simple. Running from the pain you cause only guarantees a much harder crash when reality finally catches up. Flashing police lights paint the night in harsh strokes of red and blue, ending the nightmare. Damien sits in a patrol car, his head buried in his hands, pitifully whispering her name against the cold glass, but the toxic spell is permanently broken. Kale moves quietly through the noise, a silent guardian in the chaos. Celine is not just safe today, she is completely liberated. Her friend pulls her into a fierce embrace, demanding she never apologize for surviving the storm. Kale delivers the final word. Damien is facing 20 long years in a cell and the permanent loss of his son. Celine will raise her boy in the light. The simple truth to remember is this: standing firm against someone who tries to break your spirit is a terrifying battle. But it is the only true way to shatter the cycle of pain. Celine absorbs the news, yet her chest feels completely empty. She asks Kale about his old plan to simply erase Damien. Kale meets her gaze with a quiet calm. He explains that legal justice is the only solid foundation she can build a future upon, even if his dark instincts demanded blood. From the shadows, a man steps forward carrying her little boy, who miraculously slept through the nightmare. Celine pulls her son tight against her heart, breathing in the scent of his hair. This was the only victory that mattered, not vengeance, but absolute safety. The story skips ahead 4 months, landing us in a tense courtroom. She sits tall, watching the law expose the monster he truly is. The profound lesson is undeniable. Lasting peace is never found in destroying what you hate, but in fiercely protecting what you love. The prosecutor lays out a mountain of ugly evidence. Chilling audio proves how easily Damien shifts from a weeping victim to a ruthless tyrant. The defense desperately plays for sympathy, but the jury is unmoved. The heavy gavel strikes, guilty on every single count. 18 years in a concrete box. Damien aims a venomous glare right at Celine, but her days of shrinking are gone. She holds his stare with squared shoulders until the guards drag him away, outside the courthouse. Her lawyer gently reminds her that winning the trial is merely the first step. Deep emotional wounds take much longer to close soon. She is returning to a quiet, totally safe apartment to finally exhale. The takeaway here is vital. Surviving the storm is a massive triumph. But the quiet work of rebuilding your internal peace is where true victory begins. Let us examine this scene together, because the quiet speaks volumes. Celine is led to the top floor, her stomach twisting. Ever since the trial, Kale had completely vanished, leaving only a brief note with some flowers. She pushes open the heavy oak door, and there he is. He is wearing a sharp suit, projecting that familiar, icy aura of command. But when he raises his head, his eyes carry a heavy exhaustion. He asks her to close the door. Then the untouchable kingpin sets down his pen and does the impossible. He sincerely apologizes. He admits he was wrong for manipulating her world and treating her like a fragile pawn rather than a fierce survivor. The greatest lesson we can learn here is clear. Sometimes the most powerful move a formidable person can ever make is dropping their armor and admitting their mistakes. Celine refuses to let him wallow in guilt. Crossing her arms, she reminds him that he provided the tools she needed to rescue herself. Kale turns toward the skyline, dropping a heavy confession. He fought his entire life against becoming a controlling monster. Yet he knows he crossed a line. He whispers that she deserved better. Celine steps forward to correct the record. She points out that when she demanded space, he actually stepped back. Damien would have burned the city to ash before letting her walk away. Kale murmurs that yielding once does not erase his sins. Celine holds his gaze, saying it simply proves he is capable of change. They agree to let their future unfold naturally. No armed guards, no hidden agendas. The lesson is profound. True connection thrives only in the open air of freedom, never inside a gilded cage. Before leaving, Celine thanks him for recognizing her fire when she was still lost in the dark. In that quiet space, you can see his icy walls melt away. The story skips forward, months pass, and the heavy air finally clears. Celine pushes through her classes and starts climbing the corporate ladder. Free from the terror of checking her shoulder, she truly blossoms. Earning a major promotion and little Noah, he boldly walks into his classroom, drops her hand and runs toward his friends. There is zero panic in his eyes, just pure childhood joy. Watching his sneakers hit the floor, Celine feels a profound emotional shift in her chest. It is the beautiful pride of truly returning to life. She starts therapy on her own terms. The final lesson here is absolute. You cannot build a stable new future until you find the courage to clear away the toxic rubble of your past. Let us hit pause right here, you and I, because this is where the real war starts. Her therapist never sells her a fairy tale. Those internal alarms will keep ringing. Anyone who even breathes like Damien will make her chest lock up, but slowly. The volume on that panic turns down. Healing is a messy highway, then, boom, an envelope from a concrete cell block lands on her table. Covered in Damien's chaotic scrawl, half a year of hard-earned quiet shatters, she sits completely frozen, staring at this paper grenade for 20 solid minutes, with her hand shaking over the trash can. The brutal truth of life is that sometimes we have to stare our darkest demon right in the eyes, just to prove to our own tired souls that the monster cannot hurt us anymore. Her hands shake as she rips the paper open. At first it is exactly the garbage you would expect. He spins empty apologies, using his own bad childhood as an excuse for his heavy fists. But halfway down the page, the whole script flips. Some prison program forced him to stare at his own ugly reflection. He admits he is completely shattered, and he knows he shattered her too. He just begs her to give their boy the safe life he tried to burn down. Then comes a sentence that hits like a freight train. Love is never enough if you do not know how to be a decent human being. She sits totally frozen in the silence of her living room. It forces us to swallow a harsh lesson. Getting better is a beautiful thing. But no amount of personal growth will ever erase the permanent scars you leave on the people you claim to love. Watch her fold those crinkled pages and bury them under her heavy winter coats. She is not hanging on to nostalgia here, guys. Those letters are the literal ashes of her old nightmare. It has been 12 whole months since the bloody chaos at the warehouse, and Cale finally stops circling and asks her out. He skips the flashy mobster hangouts and takes her to a dusty little Italian joint hidden in an alley. Just look at the irony. Two exhausted people breaking bread, finally out of the crosshairs. When Cale quietly asks if a part of her regrets walking away from Damien, her answer hits incredibly hard. She says she only misses the fake version of the guy she desperately wanted him to be. It shows us a brutal truth about human nature. You can still cry over a beautiful fantasy, long after you realize you were sleeping next to a monster. Stick with me, because this is where the movie shifts gears. She looks right into Cale's eyes, and there is zero doubt left in her. If she had stayed in that high-roller empire, she would just be covering new black eyes with designer silk, teaching her little boy Noah that getting hit means someone loves you. She completely refused to hand down that toxic garbage. She ripped herself out of the dark. Cale gives her this grounded smile, knowing exactly what kind of fierce survivor is sitting across his table. Out on the sidewalk under the dim streetlights, he leans in, and she meets him right in the middle. Do not confuse this with some cheap romance flick. These are two heavily scarred people, building a bomb shelter out of the wreckage. The deepest kind of love only shows up when you finally figure out how to be your own hero. Cruising home with the windows open, a totally real smile hits her face. The icy air bites her skin while she cranks up the exact loud music Damien used to scream at her for playing. It is a tiny rebellion, but it tastes like victory. Back in her quiet house, she carries her sleeping kid to bed. Noah mumbles innocent nonsense about dinosaurs and goes right back out. Standing there in the dark, the sheer weight of what she survived hits her. For 4 years, she was a dead woman walking, obviously. The trauma still has claws. She still rattles the deadbolts 3 times every night. But her brain is finally quiet. The big bad wolf is locked in a box for 20 years. Real freedom is not just breaking out of your cage. It is finally learning how to breathe without checking over your shoulder. Jump forward 2 years and look at the absolute irony of this shot. She is sitting right back in the same freezing boardroom where her whole nightmare kicked off. But the power scale is entirely flipped now. She is not the scared girl hiding against the wall anymore. She is planted at the head of the massive oak table, running the show as the director of operations. The nervous victim hiding purple bruises under baggy sweaters is gone, replaced by a cold boss in a razor-sharp suit. Her crew listens to her because they know exactly how much hellfire she swallowed to earn that chair. It makes you realize something pretty heavy about the real world. Nobody is ever going to just hand you their respect on a silver platter. You have to walk barefoot through the flames and build your own throne out of the burnt remains. The heavy doors click shut, and the absolute silence of winning just fills the room. Kyle walks in, sliding a thick envelope right across the polished wood. It is a massive payout. Blood money for the years she spent suffocating under Damien's boot. Kyle looks right past her tough executive shell, reminding her she bled for every single penny of it. The wall cracks, and she finally lets the tears fall. But the second she pulls up to the school to grab Noah, all that dark mobster drama instantly vanishes. Her kid is practically vibrating about a science fair project, completely blind to the violent underground war his mom fought just to keep him safe. It points to a really simple, beautiful truth. The biggest win any parent could ever score is just acting as a human shield, so a kid gets to actually stay a kid. Let us watch this play out, you and I. Noah is bouncing off the walls, begging for cheap pizza and insisting Kyle comes along. 10 minutes later, they are cramped in a dirty diner under buzzing neon lights. Kyle drags himself in, his expensive suit wrinkled, looking like a guy who just survived a street war. Noah instantly traps him in a loud, messy explanation of a baking soda volcano. Now watch Kyle. He locks eyes with this kid, giving a 10-year-old the exact same deadly serious attention he gives a mafia boss, watching them. The last chunk of ice in her chest just melts. It teaches us a huge lesson. When your original life burns down, you get the rare, beautiful chance to organically build a chosen family that actually matters. Have you ever felt that exact split second when the old wounds finally stop burning? The park is quiet tonight, and for once, she is not scanning the dark trees for a sniper. Kyle casually asks if she ever still thinks about the guy who ruined her. She does not even blink. The absolute terror that used to run her life is totally dead, leaving Damien as nothing but a weak ghost. When she flips the script and asks Kyle about his own messed up dad, he drops a heavy truth bomb. Some people are just broken glass, and trying to hug them is only going to cut you to pieces. He tells her straight up that he wanted to be the knight in shining armor, but she ended up saving her own life. He just handed her the crowbar. The lesson here is sharp but real. Nobody is coming to magically fix your life. You have to pick up the tools yourself. For the first time in her life, she is completely bulletproof. Not because she has some guy with a gun guarding her porch, but because she turned her own spine into steel. Skip ahead 5 quiet years. She is lounging in a gorgeous apartment she bought with her own money. Noah is older now, stuffing clothes into a bag for summer camp. The kid is glowing, totally blanking on those miserable nights hiding from his dad's screaming fits. The doctors call it trauma amnesia, but honestly, it is the best gift he could have gotten. Keeping his heart soft was her entire mission. She sinks into the sofa, watching him smile, and the total victory of it all finally settles into her bones. Make no mistake, peace is a bloody, exhausting prize to fight for. But when you finally hold it, there is absolutely nothing better in the world. Now, her and Kyle have been ruling the board side by side for 3 solid years. They do not need a legal certificate to prove they belong together. They built a safe room right on top of the ashes. It is wild to watch them grow. Kyle had to strip off the cold mercenary act to be a real partner. And she had to learn that letting someone hold the door does not make you weak. They talk through the bad days instead of throwing punches. Looking down at the city lights, she is staring at the exact same pavement where she used to bleed. The irony is just poetic. Meanwhile, 3 hours up the highway, Damien is rotting inside a tiny concrete box for the 13th year in a row. It is the ultimate life lesson sometimes. The best revenge is not pulling a trigger. The best revenge is completely erasing the monster from your story forever. Before we roll the credits, you and I need to look at this final transformation. Damien is just a ghost now, and ghosts cannot throw punches. When she catches her reflection, she sees a stranger in the best way possible. At 33, she is covered in invisible scars. But she is completely unbreakable. She beat a system designed to crush her, and here is the ultimate truth. She did not survive because a mythical knight rode in to save her. She survived because she realized she had to be her own savior. Later, on the balcony, Kyle softly asks if she is scared with Noah away at camp. She nods. But it is not that suffocating terror anymore. It is a profoundly healthy fear. It is the beautiful, undeniable proof that she finally built a life that is actually worth losing. This is where the cruel architecture of generational trauma finally makes twisted sense. She looks right at Kyle and totally shatters his darkest belief. For decades, he thought his mother was a tragic failure for trying to fix a monster. But she flips the script. His mother did not fail at all. She endured that nightmare just long enough to brand pure iron into her son's soul. Because of her suffering, Kyle has the exact emotional blueprint required to pull her out of this specific hell. His mother reached right across time to save them both. As Kyle chokes back a real sob, We have to recognize something beautiful together. The agonizing, bloody battles, fought by the people who came before us, often become the exact weapons we pick up to survive our own personal wars. Truly incredible. Let's hit pause right here, guys, and really look at her standing over those city lights. Remember the terrified woman from the first act. The one who actually believed love was supposed to come with a bruised rib and a locked door. That girl is completely gone. We always think courage is some fearless action hero kicking down walls. It isn't. True strength is feeling your hands shake so violently, you can barely hold the car keys and walking out anyway. She knows how many people are losing their silent wars in those apartments below her tonight, but she finally won hers. Her real prize isn't the money or the penthouse, it's just hearing her little boy laugh without flinching. Here's the cold truth, people. Nobody hands you the keys to your own cage. You have to break your own fingers, clawing your way out of the dark to take them. You and I have been picking apart the sick psychology of this movie for a while, but look at how it actually ends. There's no white knight crashing through the ceiling to save the day. The nightmare only stops because Celine dragged her own beaten body out of the shadows. Listen, it's painfully easy to just sit in a room full of poison gas, because your eyes finally adjusted to the sting. But her story proves the absolute best revenge against the monsters who broke you. It's just waking up and having a normal, quiet Tuesday. She took every ounce of power away from her abusers. Trauma doesn't get to roll the end credits here. Walking away from the only miserable world you know takes the kind of guts most people simply don't have. You are the one holding the pen. Make absolutely sure the villains don't get to write your final chapter.
At first, it seems like Kyle is the rescuer of the story. He hires Celine, notices her bruises, sends a car when she needs to escape, provides lawyers, doctors, security, and money. Without him, Celine's path would have been much harder. But deeper lesson is that Kyle does not truly save her. He gives her tools. Celine saves herself. This distinction is important. Survivors are often portrayed as helpless until someone powerful rescues them. But Celine's journey proves something different. She is terrified, wounded, and exhausted, but she still makes the hardest choices herself. She makes the call. She leaves the apartment. She protects Noah. She testifies in court. She confronts Damien. She rebuilds her career. She goes to therapy. She becomes a mother, a leader, and a woman who no longer apologizes for taking up space. Kyle's role is meaningful because he learns to respect that. He stops trying to be the hero of her story and becomes a supporter in it. That is the healthiest form of love and support, helping someone stand, not making them dependent on you. Years later, Celine is no longer the frightened woman hiding bruises under long sleeves. She becomes director of operations, earns respect, owns her home, raises Noah in safety, and builds a real partnership with Kyle. Her life is not perfect, but it belongs to her. The educational message is deeply inspiring. Healing is not a single dramatic rescue. It is daily work. It is choosing therapy, choosing boundaries, choosing not to return, choosing to believe your own voice again. Celine's greatest transformation is not that she escapes Damien. It is that she becomes someone who understands her own worth. The real ending is not she was saved. The real ending is she saved herself with help, courage, and the refusal to let trauma have the final word.